Hey guys, welcome back to another video. Today I'll be giving you my best Sydney Marathon tips, but these are definitely applicable to other marathons around the world and even some other races too. So make sure to stick around till the end to make sure you get as many tips as possible that you can translate to your training, your taper, and your race day, which are going to be the three main chapters of this video. So to start off with the training tips section, we're going to start with nutrition. Nutrition is super important and something that I learned a lot about in the last year, and it's completely changed my performance when I actually put in some effort into training with it and actually learning more about it. So if you don't want to make it too confusing, I would just go off of gels per hour. Yeah, if you find a gel that works well for you, start practicing with it. So basically what you want to do is work out what your body can handle in terms of gels an hour and slowly increase that over the course of a few long runs. So you might start off with 1 gel an hour and then work up to 2 gels an hour, then 3 gels an hour. And then you might notice that your stomach can't handle 4 gels an hour, like you just had a bad long run, your stomach had a bit of GI issues, and then you know that 3 is kind of the most that you can tolerate, and then you can fall back to 3 on race day and you'll get the right amount of carbs that will keep you going. When you're running a marathon, you're running pretty quick for a long period of time, so you do need the carbs to perform well. It's just a no-brainer. And with that being said, when you're doing like long run marathon workouts and stuff, it's better to practice taking the gels while you're running at marathon pace. When you're running the race, you are going to be taking it at that pace, so you don't want to take it during the recovery or while you're walking for a bit during a long run. You want to make sure to take it when you're running, because it's all practice. Opening the packet itself and consuming it while you're running fast is another skill, so it's something that you do have to practice. A lot of people say that Sydney Marathon is quite hilly, but in my opinion, it shouldn't be too hilly if you do the right training. So again, same thing with nutrition. You want to train on hills so that you're kind of falling back to Sydney Marathon where it's not even that hilly. I do a lot of runs where I run for 60 minutes up and down the steepest hill in Sydney, which is Awaba Street. It's like 400 meters across where you go up 70 meters. And if you get used to doing that for like an hour, Sydney Marathon is completely flat. Like, it's not even an issue at all. So yeah, it's all about perspective. The more you do in training, the more you're going to be used to the hills. I think it always surprises me how little people do hills, and if you're doing like a long run marathon session, you can just adjust your paces and go in a bit of a hillier course. You can always go a little bit slower than marathon race pace on the uphill, and then you can go marathon race pace on the flats, and then maybe even a little bit faster when you're going downhill. So you can always adjust the training to the hills. You don't have to do all your workouts in a flat course. If anything, it is better to add a bit of hills in your easy runs and long runs. Now, so many people talk about what the correct longest long run should be before a marathon. Now, this is going to differ depending on your experience with running. For me personally, I would go over distance when training for a marathon for maybe a couple weeks, maybe 3 or 4 weeks, but I wouldn't recommend that to everyone, especially when it's your first marathon. You obviously want the marathon race day to be your special day where you hit the marathon distance for the first time. For some people, it might only be 32K. For others, it might be 39K. For others, it might be 41K. You never actually know. It's all very, very individual, so that's why it's better to get a coach. If you want more recommendation as to how long your longest long run should be before a marathon race day, feel free to message me on Instagram and I can give you some advice. But I wouldn't know for sure unless I comprehensively look at all your training you've done and a lot of other factors, so I'd probably need to ask a lot of questions in order to answer that properly. With training, you actually want a good balance between hard marathon long run sessions and also easy marathon long run sessions. And this isn't to do with the actual difficulty of the run. This is also to do with your perceived effort. Sometimes you're just gonna feel good on a day and a hard workout might feel easy, but then other days, the easiest of workouts might feel pretty hard. But the best thing is having a mix of both of those feelings, because you wanna feel good to build that confidence up, but you also wanna feel crap sometimes because you wanna build that mental tolerance and mental toughness in order to be able to push through when it gets tough. You can't go into a marathon expecting everything's gonna be super easy. You wanna be prepared and you wanna know how it feels to run through when it feels really crap. I think the mental side is not talked about enough, and you need to have a proper plan for when you start to feel crap. If you limit yourself to only bleeding like 2 to 3 seconds per kilometer when it gets tough, it's going to save you from actually blowing up completely and going like a whole 30 seconds or 40 seconds per kilometer slower, because that's a huge blow up. That's why you need to have a plan, otherwise you're going to go in that mental negative spiral of emotions and you're going to like completely blow up really hard. So you need to practice in training, and you need to have a plan on what you're going to tell yourself. The internal talk that you give yourself is so important when you are in the hurt locker in a marathon. It can be stuff like get to the next light pole, get to the next tree, hang in for just another 5 minutes, and then just keep on extending that next goal further forward until you get to the finish line. That's one good way to do it, but everyone's gonna have a different mental plan, and it's good to have some plan than no plan. The next thing I'm gonna talk about is standing. Standing is one of the most underrated things in marathon training. It's part of your training. I used to run, stand for 8 hours a day, and then run after work. And I did that a couple times a week to actually be used to being on my feet for that long. Because after that, marathons will feel pretty easy. If you're trying to run 3, 4, 5, 6 hours in a marathon, there's barely anyone that can stand for that long without complaining. And it makes a huge difference when you know in your head already that you can stand for that long perfectly fine, because that's half the equation, because you are genuinely standing on your feet for that long when you're doing a marathon. You're upright, you're not sitting down, you're not lying down. You want to be able to stand for as long as the marathon or even more so they can fall back to marathon race duration. Now this isn't recommended on taper week obviously. On taper week you want to be off your feet a fair amount, and also when you're doing hard workout days and stuff or long run days, you probably want to rest up when you're not doing the workout or long run. But on some of your easy days it can't hurt to stand that little bit extra, walk to the shop instead of driving, and all those small things kind of add up in terms of time on feet. Time on feet is huge, don't neglect it. This part is super important. Recovery is such a huge part of marathon performance. You can train all you want and do all these hard workouts, but if you're not recovering, you're not super compensating and absorbing the fitness that the training is giving you. In order to train more, you have to recover more, and therefore that will translate to the performance. Recovery is referring to all the small stuff like sleep and diet, but there's other small 1%ers, and when you do all the 1%ers, it adds up and it gives you some huge performance gains. So especially in Australia, a lot of people like the training philosophy of doing marathon long run workouts. I'm sure this is a thing around the world as well, but I think it's pretty emphasized in Australian distance running, which is pretty cool, and I like that. It's important to run a little bit faster than marathon race pace, because then you're working at LT1, which is where a lot of gains are made. And like I've been saying a lot of times for different tips, this gives the opportunity to fall back to marathon race pace. Whereas if you train a lot slower than marathon race pace in your long run workouts, you have to actually perform at a faster pace on race day. But it's so nice when you know that in training, in a lot of your long runs, you've been doing all these tough sessions at faster than marathon race pace but falling back. Obviously this doesn't mean go flog every workout and go super quick, because that has more detriment than benefits. And by this we're talking about just 5 or 10 seconds per kilometer faster than marathon race pace, and you're not doing that the whole long run, you're just doing like intervals of that. Yeah, because you're doing intervals, you have a bit of that recovery and then you get to go quicker. So we're talking about stuff like 4 by 10 minutes and slightly faster than marathon race pace, but with like a 90-second jog recovery in between. But that's in the second half of your long run to give you that bit of extra confidence that you managed to do that after a bit of fatigue in advance. Speed training is 100% overrated in marathon training. You only need a little bit of it. Honestly, I think you only need to do like 4 by 15 second strides at the end of some of your easy runs in order to perform well in the marathon. Speed is pretty helpful, but I reckon it's like a 0.5%er. And there's much more better stuff that you can work on before you start worrying about speed. You get enough speed training from just doing 4 by 15 second strides, and a little bit of speed training that you get from the 4 by 15 second strides is enough to work on your biomechanics, because you're forced to run with good form when you're running quick. So yeah, you don't need to go hard on every session multiple times a week to get quick in the marathon. The marathon is such a long distance, you're never going to hit top speed anyway, except for maybe the last little bit of the marathon. Now we're going to move on to 4 taper tips. The first taper tip is to make sure to decrease your volume but maintain the intensity. That means run less, but run the same pace as you normally would in training. So your workouts might be half the length, but it might be the same pace or even slightly faster than what you would do on a normal training week. And your easy runs, they're going to be way shorter as well, but you're going to run the same pace as you normally would. If you rest for literally a whole week or just start running extremely slow on race week, you're probably going to feel a little flat on race day. You want that little bit of stimulus to make sure you still know how to run at a decent pace, but you just want to run way less so that you don't get fatigued. With marathon training, you're running so much, so most of the fatigue is coming from just running a lot. But if you just cut that in half, you're not going to be as tired even if you run fairly quick. Now I think this is the most basic tip of all, but make sure you don't do anything new on race week, because yeah, You don't want anything to go wrong. Make sure you try well in advance so you know what it's like on race week if you do that thing. Another big thing is race week never feels amazing. I always feel super crap on race week. I can't name the last time I've had a race where I felt good on table week. So make sure to not let that get to your head, because I've run some amazing races where I felt super crap the week leading up to the race. But to be fair, I've also had some terrible races where I felt crap leading up to the race. But in general, I've never felt good on race week, and that's not controllable. So you'd rather focus on what's controllable, and you want to stay mentally strong even if you don't feel ideal. I have a good friend who was genuinely feeling really sick on race week, and then he ran a 2:30:06 marathon at Gold Coast, which is pretty sick. And that was a PB for him, and he was super stoked with this. So things can go wrong on race week, but you can still race really well. Now my last advice is to carb load. Obviously with any race duration over 90 minutes, you can benefit a lot from carb loading. The more you carb load, technically the less you have to worry about gels and bonking during the race, because you're building up that huge glycogen storage and it's going to take longer for you to deplete that. But that being said, a lot of people like lasagna and all that sort of stuff, but don't make it too oily. Just have like super simple carbs, like just rice, pasta, nothing crazy. Another good way to carb up, especially the night before and the morning of the marathon, is the Morton 320 drink mix. I'm obviously not sponsored. Morton obviously only sponsors super elite level athletes. I would love to be sponsored by them one day, but yeah, the Morton 320 drink mix, I highly recommend. I have it all the time before my ultra marathons and yeah, my 50k road races. And yeah, it does wonders in terms of like carb loading. It gives you so much carbs in such a condensed little package, because you're just consuming liquids, but it's giving you so many carbs. Now finally, we're gonna move on to race day tips. Now this is mainly applicable to countries that are super hot, but you can also benefit a lot even if it's not that hot. Make sure you don't wear black, because that absorbs a lot of heat and it will inevitably affect performance. Obviously it's only a little bit, but when you're running for a long time, it can make a huge difference. Now this tip is pretty course specific to Sydney Marathon, but obviously you have that huge downhill start. I would almost cut that entire first bit of downhill out of the race and pretend like that's the warm-up. And the reason for this is because when it's downhill, you're gonna run pretty quick anyway, but the people that actually race the downhill and go super quick down it are gonna ruin their quads super early due to eccentric muscle contraction in the quads, but that's gonna affect you so much in the latter half of the race. The 60 seconds that you bank in the first 5 kilometers is gonna mean nothing over the course of 3 hours, 4 hours, 5 hours in the marathon. You'd rather go slower and make sure you don't cook yourself too early so they can actually save that for later on. The marathon is not a sprint. Like, you don't need to be so tense at the start line. You don't need to sprint past everyone at the start. Like, if you control yourself for the first little bit of the race, or for as long as possible, you're just shortening the race mentally. Like, if you take a chill for 10 kilometers, you're turning the race into a 32-kilometer race, and that's a huge advantage over your rest of your competitors. Now, the next tip is to pace to the course markers. The course will have those like 5K, 10K, half marathon, maybe even 30K, 35K markings, and because your GPS isn't 100% accurate and you're never going to be able to take perfect tangents, you are going to be a bit off with the course markings. So it's important to know what split you want to hit for certain course markings and memorize that in your head or write it on your arm so that you can check that you're on track to running the right time. Now my final tip is that it's way easier to run with a group of people, so make sure to stick to a good group that's running your target pace so they can just sit at the back of them and hang on for a free ride. It's been scientifically proven that your rate of perceived exertion, which is how hard something feels, will feel a lot lower, meaning feel easier, if you run in a group of people. And honestly, I don't think it's really a bad thing to just stick at the back of a huge pack, because no one is forcing you to run at the front and pace other people. You can just sit at the back of a group that's running the correct pace and then sprint past them at the end. Yes, it might feel a little bad to do it, but at the end of the day, there's like thousands of people in a race and you can't really control what everyone does. And if anything, you're just running smart by sticking right behind a good group of people and then just sending it at the end if you can. Thanks for watching this video. If it helped you in any way, please leave a like and subscribe for more content. Comment below what tips you found helpful. And also if you have any other tips, I'd want to know as well. I'm going to leave you with one little message about the marathon. I think marathon running is a lot easier than what a lot of people make it out to be, because at the end of the day, you're just running at a pace they can hold for 42 kilometers. It's only hard if you run at a pace they can only hold for 10 kilometers, because then you have to suffer for the last 75% of the race, which obviously will make it a lot harder. So you need to be smart and you need to run the right pace, and then it's pretty cruisy. And at the end of the day, if you don't enjoy the process, you're not going to run well. Running is such a long-term sport. You gain so much from just years and years of running, and if you don't enjoy the process, you're not going to be in the sport for that long. So enjoy it and then just run well. But obviously at the end of the day, it is a hard thing, and you should be proud of just finishing any marathon, because you went out there, you got it done, and I guess finishing it is what matters at the end of the day.